Welcome to today's meeting on single-use and takeaway items. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to all who are joining us online via the live webcast. I'll introduce myself. My name is Malgosia Pajor, and I work for the City of Toronto's Public Consultation Unit, and I'm here to help facilitate this event. I would like to start with our First Nations acknowledgement. The land I am standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We acknowledge that they offered assistance to the first European travelers to this territory and shared their knowledge for survival in what was at times a harsh climate. We seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on honor and deep trust. Now, before we go into the agenda, I just want to introduce a few staff that are with us here today. Vince Sufaraza. I've been practicing your name, Vince. Vince is Acting General Manager with Solid Waste Management Services. Charlotte Ueda, Acting Director, Waste Management Planning. And Sean Hurley. Sean, are you with us over there to my right? Acting Manager, Policy, Planning, and Support. And there's a number of other staff here as well who are available to speak with you and answer questions later on. Now, today's agenda is pretty simple. There'll be a presentation followed by question and answer period, followed by some time to speak with staff one-on-one and learn more about solid waste programs. Some housekeeping. We've got washrooms, which are, if you leave this room, just go to the left, just past the sign-in area. Exits, you've got 5 exits along the back, as well as one to my right. There will be note-taking for the question and answer session. And this is a public event, so media may be here, which means you may be recorded. Now, for transparency, again, this session is recorded and comments received will become part of the public record. For the webcast, we will be recording speakers and anyone in the front of the room, okay? If you ask a question from the microphone, your voice will be recorded, but you will not be in front of the camera. If you don't want your voice to be recorded, maybe just put your hand up. You can write down a question, staff can come to you, or certainly you can ask staff after this session. All right, code of conduct. Clearly, no form of discrimination or harassment is tolerated, and this includes discrimination based on gender, race, ethnicity, religion, age, sexual orientation, or disability. In the event of non-compliance with the human rights and harassment policy, you may be asked to leave the meeting immediately. Also a reminder that in accordance with the Municipal Elections Act and City's use of resources during an election period policy, candidates, registered third-party advertisers or political parties may not distribute campaign materials on or in city facilities or at city events, but are permitted to distribute campaign materials on public right-of-ways like our sidewalks. Please excuse me while I read this information because I want to make sure I get it right. All right, lobby register. We're almost done, folks. We're going to get to our presentation very soon. The bylaw here says any communication about procurement process, now that's involving a prospective supplier, for example, must comply with procurement policies and documentation. Anyone who has a product or material you wish to share with the city staff is encouraged to review this policy. Website is provided to ensure that they comply with the lobbyist code of conduct. Now, council direction. Today's meeting and public consultation efforts currently underway are being held following City Council direction in July 2018 of this year. The item PW 31 Point 10, to A, develop a work plan aimed to reduce the use of single-use or takeaway packaging or products by completing pre-consultation with residents and stakeholders in the fall 2018 and a report back in 2019. B, develop a policy which would restrict use of plastic straws in the City of Toronto. And C, consult with affected businesses, community health groups, and other organizations prior to the submission of the proposed policy, which would restrict plastic straws, and report to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee in 2019. So, moving on to our consultation objectives. We're here today. This is part of a public event and webcast. There's a webinar this Thursday. There's stakeholder meetings that are taking place with food and beverage representatives, retail and manufacturers, accessibility, environmental, non-governmental organizations, and researchers. This is pretty cool actually, we've already received 6,000 responses to the online survey, which is wonderful. There's also a public opinion poll that's taking place, and stage 1 consultation findings will be reported on to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee once their meetings resume in February 2019. Stage 2 consultation takes place in the spring and summer of 2010. I want to make sure I get this part in for accessibility. Oh, did we miss something? Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. The City of Toronto recognizes that some single-use and takeaway items support accessibility for individuals with disabilities, and that programs and policies must be inclusive. And I'm going to give you an example. Plastic straws are vital for some individuals with disabilities, and alternatives to single-use plastic straws, such as paper or reusable straws, may not be a viable solution for all individuals who require them. Impacts to accessibility will be considered as a component of this initial round of consultation, as well as future rounds examining specific programs and policies. The consultation team is working with the City of Toronto's Accessibility Office in designing consultation activities, including hosting an accessibility-related stakeholder meeting. Thank you for your patience. We are so close to the presentation, okay? So we're here to share information, answer questions, provide clarification, and if you'd like to share detailed comments, we can't stress enough how important it is to fill out the online survey. Of course we're here, of course you can fill it out here, but do go online if you can. Comments must be received by October 28th for consideration. This contact information will be put up on the screen again after the presentation, and all materials from today are posted online. So I am going to turn it over now to Charlotte C.E.T.S for the presentation, and thank you for your patience.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to take us through the consultation process and talk about the consultation objectives, why we're here, and at the end, there will be a Q&A portion, so if you can hold on to the end, and myself, along with some other solid waste staff, will be here to answer any questions you may have on the presentation. So with that, what are the items that we are talking about tonight? So following council direction that we received back in July, they've asked us to look for items to be targeted for reduction. So looking at that definition of single use or takeaway, could be any product that is designed for a single use after which it is disposed of, regardless of whether it ends up in the garbage stream, in the recycling stream, or in the green bin organic stream. So the key focus here is around reduction, so looking at the first R within the 3 Rs. We also recognize that there isn't one accepted definition, so through the consultation phase, we are also looking for input and feedback on what you think single use should be defined as. Typically, these products are not designed for durability or reuse, and in front of me there's a couple of items that we have identified. Black plastics, so takeaway containers, as well as single-use plastic straws, single-use plastic bags, disposable hot to-go beverage cups or cold to-go beverage cups, as well as plastic cutleries. So again, this is not a comprehensive list. These are just some items that have been targeted or identified through other jurisdictions that also have policies in place to reduce these items. But in the survey, you will find that there will not be an opportunity for you to add other items that you think could be addressed or should be addressed to the City of Toronto, targeted for reduction. So again, to clarify, this is not a comprehensive list. So just kind of taking a couple steps back, and how do we get here? So how did the City of Toronto get to this point in stage where we are consulting the public on items targeted for reduction? Starting off in January 2018, the committee that we report to, Solid Waste Management Services Division, to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, they brought forward an item, a letter, essentially asking the city to look at actions to reduce the reliance of Toronto residents on single-use items. And at that committee meeting, this item was referred to Solid Waste Management Services to be considered as part of the long-term waste management strategy. So I will be speaking a little bit more about what that is in the next couple of slides. Subsequently, in April 2018, Solid Waste Management Services brought a report to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee on the challenges that the City of Toronto is facing with the Toronto Blue Bin Recycling Program. In the staff report, we identified some of the issues that we are having with addressing contamination. So those are items that don't belong in the blue bin recycling stream, such as food waste. So we talk about the increasing contamination levels and the challenges of managing those levels and how it's essentially impacting costs to the City of Toronto and the residents. We also talk about in this report new restrictions in the international recycling market. So for those that may not be aware, there is a recycling market where some materials are sent offshores for processing and for marketing. They have since put in, restrictions on the quality, the level of contamination that is accepted in the recycled products that are being sent overseas. So as a result, there's challenges with finding a long-term, sustainable, financially viable market for recycling materials. And lastly, the report also addresses or provides an update on the work that the City of Toronto has been doing along with our municipal colleagues on advocating, working with the province on moving towards an extended producer responsibility regime. So the Waste Free Ontario Act, which was enacted recently in late 2016, essentially what it tells us is that the producers of printed paper and packaging are to be held fully responsible or accountable for managing the products that they put into our waste stream. So that could be whether it be financially responsible or also looking at taking over the operations as well. So there was a delay in the development of moving towards extended producer responsibility. So that's one of the items that was addressed in the staff report. So as a result of bringing the staff report to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, the City Council has put forward a couple of decisions for the City Council as well as Solid Waste Management Services to act on. So in this report, City Council requested that, one, the federal government to develop a national strategy that addresses plastics pollution. Including in that recommendation, there are 9 specific recommendations, anywhere from making the producers of printed paper and packaging responsible for reducing the amount of waste that they're putting out into our waste stream. Also looking at the design of products and packaging to be more reusable, recyclable, or compostable, as well as supporting eliminating the use of problematic products and packaging such as plastic straws or single-use plastic items. Additionally, through that report, City Council requested that Solid Waste Management Services Division develop a process, which we're here today, to reduce and or eliminate single-use takeaway products and packaging. And this again supports the long-term waste management strategy that the city adopted back in 2016. So I'll speak a little bit more about that and how this is has been a guiding document, a guiding principle for the City of Toronto in how we develop our policies, plans, and programs around not just single-use items, but all the waste that we manage and create as a City of Toronto. So the long-term waste management strategy was adopted by Toronto City Council in July of 2016. The strategy places great emphasis on reduction and reuse. So we are obviously trying to increase participation in our blue bin program as well as our green bin organics program. The priority is focusing on not making that waste to begin with. So again, the first R is our priority that we're trying to achieve through the long-term waste management strategy. The strategy also places emphasis on public engagement. So what that means is reaching out to communities, reaching out to residents, stakeholders, program users, customers, and households, multi-residential buildings to be a part of that conversation and to provide their input and feedback on how they want to see their policies, their programs being formed and implemented by the City of Toronto. So these two are, I guess, sort of the guiding principles that we're using here today to help form this pre-consultation process on single-use items. And furthermore, actually, in the long-term waste management strategy, there is one particular recommendation that was identified where, again, looking at promoting greater reduction or waste reduction by looking at potentially looking at levies, fines, fees, mandating source separation, and even considering things like disposal bans. Again, or developing local extended producer responsibility measures. So the strategy does identify reduction of these materials as an option or as an item for us to pursue. So all of these council direction, the long-term waste management strategy does align and support the conversation that we're about to have today. So City of Toronto, we're not new at this. We have done some work in the field of reducing single-use items. So I'm just going to walk through a high-level history of some of the actions that we have taken since 2007. The first one is the Target 70 report that was adopted by Council, which essentially City Council has adopted a 70% diversion target from landfill. And within this Target 70 report, some of the actions or some of the items that Council has asked us to look at was, again, promoting the culture of reduction and reuse and looking at things like coffee cups or single-use plastic bags. So as a result of that staff report, that Target 70 strategy, City Council adopted a 5-cent fee for plastic bags, and those was applied to all retailer bags that were distributed in the City of Toronto. Following that, we also did adopt a bylaw that's still in place currently that prohibits the distribution of retailer bags that are not compliant with the city's blue bin program. So for example, what this bylaw would do was prohibit the distribution of a plastic bag that was compostable or biodegradable. And what this does essentially is to ensure that all plastics that are put in the recycling program when processed with other plastics don't lower the quality or degrade once they're made into a new product such as a plastic bench or a picnic table. In 2012, Toronto City Council declared the plastic 5-cent fee bylaw a success. We did present a staff report back in 2012, 2013, reporting on the results of an opinion poll in terms of the changed behavior of Toronto residents and whether the 5-cent fee actually was effective or successful in changing their behavior and getting them to think about perhaps bringing a reusable bag instead of using or purchasing a single-use plastic bag. So the plastic bag fee was rescinded. And following that, the City of Toronto Solid Waste Management Services Division did put out quite a few campaigns, again, around reduction. So promoting residents, businesses, stakeholders on bringing reusable mugs, cups, and reusable bags rather than making or using a single-use plastic bag or a single-use or takeaway coffee cup. And then in 2016, actually we started the development on the long-term waste management strategy back in 2013. It was a multi-year process. Lot of stakeholder engagement, a lot of consultation, a lot of feedback received through this process in developing, again, a long-term waste management strategy that prioritizes reduction and reuse. In 2017, just recently, actually 2018, Solid Waste Management Services also brought forward a new, not a new, but a policy around the addition of new materials. So essentially it's considerations that the city has always taken when looking at new products that want to be added to our blue bin program or to our green bin program. So it looks at things like, consumer ease of use. So is it easy for the resident to participate in the program? Is it easy to, separate it and put it into their blue bin or green bin. Is there a market for that product? Is it a financially viable market? So those are considerations that we have always undertaken when we're looking to add or modify our blue bin program or our green bin program. And what this report does is just makes it transparent. So we're letting products, manufacturers and producers know of the considerations that we undergo when looking at products for addition to our programs. And so all of this brings us here to today and into 2019. So this is the start of the conversation. I want to stress that this is pre-consultation. So really we're asking two questions of residents of the City of Toronto as well as stakeholders. So I'll go into a little bit more details on what we'll be asking you. But before then, just want to provide some context. So that was the City of Toronto in terms of what we've been doing over the several years in targeting items for reduction and reuse. But I also want to talk about some of the other jurisdictions within the City of Toronto and what they have been done, or what has been done in their jurisdictions to, again, address these items. The Vancouver and British Columbia, so they have actually undergone a 1.5 to 18-month consultation with their residents on items to reduce. So there's a pretty long list of items that they identified for target: plastic and paper shopping bags, styrofoam takeout containers, hot and cold takeout or to-go cups, as well as straws and utensils. Also, the City of Victoria also have recently undergone consultation over a 1-year period. And what they have done is they've actually put in some bylaws to address single-use items or single-use plastic bags. So what they have done is businesses are essentially able to provide these single-use items at request only, and they're only able to provide reusable bags or paper bags at request only, and they are not allowed to, I believe, distribute single-use plastic bags. So that's what they have in place in their jurisdiction. Montreal, same thing. They have also done extensive consultation on how to reduce or what to reduce and how to reduce those items in their jurisdiction. And what they have now in place is a ban on plastic shopping bags. And again, there are different ways of going about it. It could be some groups are exempted from it. It could be at request only. There may be a fee applied to it, or maybe even, again, a voluntary measure that the residents, that the restaurants and businesses can employ themselves. So we're here to talk about all the different policy tools that are available to us to implement, from voluntary measures to mandatory measures. So furthermore, it's not just the City of Toronto and other Canadian municipalities that are looking at this. Plastics waste and marine litter waste, actually specifically, is on the provincial as well as the federal government's radar. So we're in conversation with all two levels of government. So the first one I'll point out here is the province of Ontario with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. So previously they had released, under the Waste-Free Ontario Act, a strategy for a waste-free Ontario and building a circular economy. Within the circular economy, there is a goal of moving towards a zero-waste Ontario. And essentially, within the strategy, they're looking or have suggested looking at policy tools and mechanisms, such as bans on materials, as well as looking at the design of materials, so encouraging, incentivizing producers of products to really take into consideration the durability, reusability of their products and packaging that they're putting into our markets. And also, again, looking at extended producer responsibility, so holding them, making them accountable for the products that they're creating and putting into our market for our consumption and for our use. So federal efforts on single-use and takeaway items. So the federal government has engaged in consultation, essentially moving Canada towards zero plastic waste. And this is more driven by the Oceans Plastics Charter. So again, targeting the amount of plastics that we find in our marine system. And this was adopted by G7, and it was also a focus of last month's G7 Environment Ministers meeting. So again, it's a topic that is being discussed at the federal level as well. So the City of Toronto is supporting that by looking at how we ourselves locally can develop policies and programs in place to help achieve our federal as well as our provincial goals. In June 2018, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities also passed a resolution requesting the federal government, officially requesting them to really look at developing a strategy to target plastics reduction, again, focusing on plastic marine litter. In September 2018, last month, if this resolution was passed, what it does essentially is it requests the federal strategy to actually address single-use items and plastics. And this is in part due to a motion that Toronto City Council's, the mayor actually did write a letter in support of this to the federal government, asking for a federal strategy to be put in place so that we ourselves can find alignment to that, to develop our policies to strengthen their direction as well. So I'm just going to come back to why are we here today? So this is the start of a conversation, and it's going to be a multi-phase consultation process. So just to kind of go back to what Magosha said earlier on today, Toronto City Council has directed us to look at developing a work plan to reduce the use of single-use or takeaway items. They've also asked us specifically to look at plastic straws. And again, we do acknowledge that there is accessibility concerns with that item, or how we would take that into consideration when looking at developing a plan around reducing plastic straws. And again, they've asked us to do this through extensive consultation. So just some examples. I think I listed them earlier on, but I'm just going to go through a little bit more in detail of some of the items that we have brought forward based on our jurisdictional scan of other items that are being targeted in other jurisdictions. So the first one, or first two, kind of go hand in hand. It's a disposable hot to go and cold to go cups. So your cold drink cups as well as your hot coffee cups. These two items are not recyclable or not accepted in the City of Toronto's Blue Bin program. However, regardless, I just want to again stress that really what we're trying to focus on here is reduction and reuse. So it's more so how to reduce the reliance of people using these materials in their daily lives, rather than focusing on making it recyclable, or how can we do better by diverting it through Blue Bin or the Green Bin program. So plastic bags is another item that is potentially up for consideration to be targeted through some policy or program. These plastic bags are accepted in the City of Toronto's Blue Bin program. But again, it's not about diverting it through a recycling program. It's about reducing the reliance of using these materials and moving or replacing it with a reusable item such as a cloth bag. That also same goes for paper bags and disposable cutlery. So disposable cutlery currently right now not accepted, not recyclable in the City of Toronto's Blue Bin program. So some other examples, black plastic containers. So these are the takeaway containers you find at hot to go counters. The City of Toronto does not accept these materials in the Blue Bin recycling program. The white or clear plastic containers, so some of the restaurants or some takeaway containers have actually been converted into a white plastic bottom. Those are accepted in the City of Blue Bin program, and more so has to do with the color itself. Black plastics can't be effectively, efficiently sorted with our recycling processes. However, the plastic white ones can be. Plastic straws, again, mentioned that a couple of times, as well as looking at styrofoam takeout containers or extended polystyrene takeout containers. So these, again, are accepted in the Blue Bin program. Again, however, I want to stress that it's about reduction rather than recycling. So just some of the challenges to kind of help inform as you're kind of thinking through the items, thinking about how you would make changes in your daily lives, as well as, the behaviors of City of Toronto residents. Just some other information to provide a bit more of a background context on some of the challenges that we see with these items. So the first thing with the City of Toronto does do regular litter audits, and what we do is we look and see the prevalence of litter items around our litter bins. So the common items within our top 10 items, single-use and takeaway items are prevalent. So within our top 10 litter items that we see through our audits, we do find things like cup lids, straws, plastic packaging, plastic cutlery. So all these items are showing up in our litter audits as being, again, prevalent within City of Toronto streets. We also note, again, that many of these items are incorrectly being placed in our Blue Bin program. And that leads to a lot of, issues with the program in itself. Increasing contamination essentially is an increase in costs for the City of Toronto and ultimately for the ratepayers. So by reducing them, we're hopefully reducing the amount of contamination in our Blue Bin recycling stream. We also do regular audits as well. So we do curbside audits of our single family as well as our apartment and condominium buildings. And from our audits, we're finding that there's quite a bit of paper cups, so that's the hot and cold to-go cups, are being generated, being consumed, and being generated by residents in the City of Toronto. And the volume of these items are increasing over time. So we're noticing a lot more takeaway items, and we're noticing that in our waste streams. So again, focusing on reduction on how to reduce the generation of that by switching to a reusable or to not even using that product to begin with. And just to kind of get a bit of a more of a a context around the amount of litter that we see. So in 2017, the City of Toronto collected 3,000 tons of litter within the city. And here are just some stats that were presented to us, and this is from like the federal government. So to again, bring it up to a much larger national scale, Canadians use about 1.6 billion coffee cups annually. Marine litter, most of it is, about 80% of it enters into the water from land. And that's more so because of litter blowing out into from our streets, from our containers, from our streets and into the waterways. And since 1994, 700,000 Canadians have participated in the Great Shore or Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup. So again, that's just to combat or to mitigate the amount of marine plastics entering into our water system. So I'm going to talk about some of the approaches that we're considering. So the first question, the first couple of slides were more so around what are the items that we should be, the Toronto residents want us to reduce. The second part of the question through the consultation is looking at how would you like us to reduce or target those items. So one possible approach is to look at a mandatory, whether it be through a fee, a ban. It could also potentially be requiring restaurants or commercial establishments to have at the point of purchase a sign educating customers of a single-use items. So the City of Toronto does have broad authorities to essentially decide on how items or how services are offered. And that's also what's required of customers with regards to signage. So just some examples. So what this could look like, again, this is not limited to, but what could look like is a by request bylaw. So this is requiring businesses, retailers, restaurants to only distribute these items when they're asked by the customer. And another one, it could be, again, a signage bylaw. So we have to have in place, or they have to have in place, some sort of sign, some sort of education poster visible to the customer, educating them on the impacts of, or how to reduce their single-use takeaway items. And the city could also look at a disposal ban, and we would apply this at our landfill, at our transfer station. And if we find that the loads of materials being dumped at these sites exceed a certain threshold, then it could result in potentially an additional fine or additional fee. Because it's, again, we're trying to dispose or trying to minimize the amount of this material going to our landfills. So these are just some examples of mandatory approaches that the City of Toronto could take to help address or to reduce single-use items. So complementary to that are the voluntary measures. So this would be more looking at it from a promotion, education, raising awareness through education campaigns. And so, for example, it could be voluntary posting. So the difference between the previous mandatory bylaw was, voluntarily asking restaurants and retailers to voluntarily put up their own signs, maybe talking about their own reusable programs. So they may have a program where they offer an incentive for any customer that comes in with their own coffee mug or with their own tumbler. So it's more so provide information on maybe steps that they're doing to help reduce their items within their own establishment. It could also be, again, looking at a broader education campaign that we do as a City of Toronto, and also working with the distributors of the single-use takeaway items. And again, of course, we can look at a combination of both, so having a combination of mandatory approaches paired with the voluntary approaches as well. So again, there's different ways of going about it. So the survey does ask you for your preference on what measure would you like to see to address or to reduce single-use items. So that pretty much comes to the end of the presentation. So I'm just going to kind of go over the next steps, and just to remind everyone that there is an online survey that's open online till October 28th. And these are some of the discussion questions, or some of the questions that you will be asked when taking that survey. You can, again, the two questions we're really asking is, what items would you like for us to target for reduction and reuse? How should we reduce or reuse it, whether you prefer the voluntary or the mandatory, or a combination thereof? As well, of course, there's an opportunity for you to provide written comments as well. So you are more than welcome to submit written comments to through the online survey, but also via email at wastestrategy@toronto.ca. And just to reiterate again, that all the emails as well as the survey must be completed by October 28th, because that allows city staff to come back to review the results and to prepare a staff report back to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee later in 2019. So here we go. So I think I pretty much covered all of this stuff. So we do have a webinar taking place this Thursday. So essentially be the same content that has been presented today. This is being broadcasted right now. This video will also be posted online for you to look at afterwards. And we will be having stakeholder meetings next week. And those would be the retailers, the grocers, the commercial establishments, processors, as well as non-government organizations, environmental organizations, and so on and so forth. So we will be having stakeholder meetings with those groups next week. The commenting period, again, closes on October 28th, so please go online, complete the survey. If you want to have written comments, you can submit that at wastestrategy@toronto.ca. And we will be coming back with a staff report and towards, I would say, early Q1 2019, and from there on, we will also be engaging in phase 2 consultation. So depending on the outcome of the phase 1 consultation, staff will be coming back out again to ask more pointed questions on developing our policies and programs. So with that, I'd like to conclude the presentation and open it up for some questions about the presentation, what you saw here today. So I'm not sure if there's instructions for how to do it.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. And that was really good. You took us through a lot of information very effectively. And not only were you effective, but you finished before your time, which means that we have a little more time for questions, because we're going to be able to take your questions up until 8:15, and then we're going to go back to more of an open house format so you can have one-on-one conversations. So we've got a mic to my left and a mic over to my right, so feel free to line up. And if you don't want to line up, that's okay. You can definitely flag us with your hand, and we have staff, Tracy at the back, that can bring a mic over to you. So I think that we've got a question right here. Yes, please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Nelly. I'm a concerned citizen, and thank you so much, first of all, to the City of Toronto for running this session. I think it's very important and it's very motivating to see all of us here. I just wish we were tenfold this number. So aside from that, I'll start with two quick anecdotes. I take my cup, I go to Tim Hortons, I've lugged it all day, I'm very proud of myself, I'm ready to order my coffee, I order my medium double, and I hand over my cup. I'm ready for the person to just fill it in. He grabs a coffee mug to measure exactly the size that I've ordered in case I get, a milliliter more than what I've ordered, measures it and throws it in the garbage. Obviously, shock and dismay, I'm ready to throw a tantrum. I compose myself and walk out. Second example, I go to a takeout place, I carry my container. On the checkout, I'm offered a plastic bag, which I vehemently, obviously, deny. And I say, just a friendly chat, why do you guys have those and do you have any alternatives? He says, well, we have these. And he pulls behind the counter at a very, hidden place, paper bags. And he says, unfortunately, those cost, one of the paper bags cost 10 times, as a plastic bag. So a few points here. I'm a consumer, the industry is pointing to us. It's your responsibility to ask me as a business. I'm not gonna lose you as a consumer if I impose. We point a finger to the businesses. Well, it's your responsibility to serve me in something that I expect you to be responsible. And then we look at the city because you guys can do that. So you covered that very nicely, that you have those mechanisms, and I would strongly suggest that you do the carrot and a little bit of the stick. So I go to the grocery store, can we make that 5 cents, 25 cents? Because that's the lowest denominator after the penny got obsoleted, thank goodness. 5 cents is nothing. I see people grabbing 20 bags without blinking an eye. So if we make it a little more expensive, maybe people are gonna start reusing those.
Thank you very much for that, because in terms of reducing, really, you become an educator on the front line. I'd just like to see, does staff have any comments they want to add to those two very important anecdotes?
It's just the question is, what can we do more
Yeah.
to encourage those businesses and give them grants, give them signage, and start soon and early?
That's an
Thank
important
you.
question. Thank you. Can we have somebody check to make sure that the mics at the front are on and
How about that? Does that work? Okay. First of all, yeah, so that's great for you. That's great. Kudos for bringing a reusable mug, and also looking for a more, I guess, like a reusable or alternative to a disposable item. And that's exactly the feedback that we're looking for, essentially, is understanding what barriers are in place currently right now as a resident, as a consumer that you're facing in City of Toronto establishments. And if it's, again, it's sort of like maybe the pushback, or maybe it's using a disposable cup to fill a reusable mug. That's the sort of feedback that we're looking for, right? And if you feel that a 25-cent fee might be more of more of an incentive to, let's say, discourage the use of single-use plastic bags, that's exactly the kind of feedback that we're looking for. So again, yeah, thank you for sharing that experience. I feel like, I imagine probably other Torontonians may also share your thoughts on that as well.
Thank you. We're just going to alternate between mics. So just to my right, please.
Comment and a question. One, we were a little surprised that plastic bottles wasn't in your list of bad things. My second question, though, is on the voluntary options that you have listed, are there any studies that show how effective they are? So putting up the signage or by request, because I think you're asking us to consider alternatives. One of the criteria for me would be, what do other area or organizations or other cities have, and are they effective?
Right. Yeah, so to your first point about plastic bottles and how you were surprised that it was not on the list of items for consideration. So again, this is why we're having this conversation, right? So we had only come up with a list of items that had been targeted for reduction in other jurisdictions. However, if you feel, again, if Torontonians feel that plastic water bottles is something that should be considered for targeted reduction, absolutely, that feedback is welcome through the survey, and that again opens it up to any other sort of single-use item or takeaway products. To the second point, in terms of whether the other, let's say, jurisdictions that have put in place policies or programs, and its efficacy in terms of if it's actually achieved, if it's done its done its work in actually reducing the items. So that's something that staff, that's our job, right? To essentially go back, reach out to those jurisdictions, ask for those studies, ask for the impact, ask for has it actually resulted in anything. So at this point in time, I wouldn't be able to provide you with a response to that, but to say that that is something that staff will be considering through the consultation process, and it's our due diligence to also follow up in other jurisdictions that have those policies to help inform the staff report that will be coming back in 2019.
Okay, to my left, please.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate all the work you've been doing and for this public consultation. 3 quick questions. One is, it just strikes me that the regulations that you're proposing, even the mandatory ones, are really not that stringent. They don't really, when I think ban, I think of an outright ban, but that's not really where you guys are headed, it seems. So my question is, why are they still pretty open, and is there a consideration to actually make them stronger? The second question is, there seems to be a real opportunity around, public city events, street parties and all the festivals, the great festivals that happen in Toronto. Is there any focus on those types of spaces and events, especially also cafeterias, the hospitals, and you think of the pathway underneath Toronto and the immense amount of waste that moves there on a daily basis. So again, a focus on those types of places and events. And third is timelines. I mean, I work as a sustainability consultant. I would like to start threatening potential companies around, what they need to be doing now to make sure they're ready for the future. Do you have any sense of timelines of what we could be telling them? Thank you.
Yeah, So the first question was around bans, and you're looking at mandatory approaches. So it is, I would say, included within the scope of something that the city could consider. So that includes bans, fines, fees. We can also look at even incentivizing restaurants, retailers, distributors to not distribute those items. So I would say, yes, it could be a tool or mechanism that the city could consider. But this is why we're having this conversation. If that's something that the residents want us or stakeholders want us to pursue, that's the feedback we're looking for. So again, it's sort of, you tell us how you think would be the most effective tool to achieve the reduction that we want to achieve. Sorry, the second question, if I recall, was around looking at special events as well as cafeterias. So that is, I believe we were also directed by council to look at, I think, our own in-house, which is more around, I think, our divisions, agencies, and corporations, if I'm not mistaken. Street events, I don't recall it being specifically called out, but again, when we do look at something that's more of like a City of Toronto policy or program, we would look at our other areas where that type of material would be generated. So I would say it could be within scope of the consultation that we're having today in addressing single-use items. And I forget, sorry, the last piece, I apologize.
Timelines.
Timelines, okay, so the timelines is quite dependent on the outcome of this first round of consultation. So for example, let's say if we are going out with a, feedback received at consultation, felt that residents and stakeholders wanted to or preferred having more of a voluntary approach, that might be a shorter timeline. Whereas let's say if the feedback through consultation found that there was a strong support for looking at more mandatory approaches, that then could be a longer timeline. So that it's hard to say, but I would probably guesstimate probably about 18 months to 2 years, depending on the level of action the city would take from voluntary to seeing something in place at a mandatory level.
Okay. And now the lineup is growing a little longer, and we do have time to take questions. Those 3 were important questions that were just asked, but do try and choose maybe one key question, because you know what, it's so important to hear from as many people as we can tonight.
Okay, I just want to hitchhike on with the plastic bottles. I live in Etobicoke, and as I walk in the park and so on, I see plastic bottles, but I don't see any beer cans, or I don't see any beer bottles, or I see very few. And I think that's because somebody, if not the person who drank the beer, picks that up and takes it back and gets a refund. And I know your timeline started in 2007, but I'm pretty sure before that, Toronto had a policy that so much of the pop sold had to be sold in bottles that were returnable. That is not indicated on your chart, but I'm pretty sure that happened. And I'm wondering if something like that could help with the plastic bottles, pop cans, and the drink boxes as well.
Right. So that I think also falls, and it might be again something for consideration under the Waste Free Ontario Act with the provincial government, looking at, so essentially I think we're talking about is the deposit return program for LCBO beer bottle containers, and that sort of helps to maybe potentially see less of those materials in our public spaces, because people collect them and put them and return them for to get their deposit back. So under the Extended Producer Responsibility Program, Waste Free Ontario Act, it could be something that at a provincial level looking to incentivize by putting potentially like a deposit return program on items like plastic bottles. So again, it's a whole host of different types of policies and programs that the city could look at, but that's something that we may look under the provincial legislation as well, because that sort of, again, just mirrors something that's already in place for a different type of container.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, please.
Hi. So we're looking to hear from people about their own personal experience. My personal experience is that most people I know are extremely confused about what goes in which bin. Like, I love the Waste Wizard or your app, or apparently people can't hear me. Most people are confused about what goes where. I am the person telling my friends, FYI, coffee cups are not recyclable, but the vast majority of people that I tell that to are shocked to hear that information. I know people in this room obviously know that, but it's really not widely known. I've noticed that you're starting to now put some stickers out that say like, no coffee cups on recycling bins. Is there any consideration to just get to the root of the issue, install public green bins around the city, and have proper labels on each bin? like actually on the bin that tells people where it goes. I noticed that there's a lot of ad campaigns right now, like the not wanted in your blue bin and that type of thing, but instead of paying for those, just actually putting labels on the bin and having green bins, especially since a lot of the problem is that food and whatnot is ending up in the recycling.
Thank you.
So thank you for that, because then it gives me an opportunity to plug our new TO Waste app. Just launched.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
So now you can tell your friends to go online to the Apple
I
or
do.
Google stores and download that. So that's for the City of Toronto residents on your smartphones. Look it up, see what item goes where. So no, but to your point about the, I guess like the misinformation around the recyclability of the coffee cups and whether it's accepted in the blue bin program or it's not. So part of the challenge there is, so I agree that having stickers and enforcing through education, campaigns, through bin stickers, and putting signage up. Part of the challenges with that is that the blue bin program isn't standardized across municipalities. So for example, a resident living north of the city or to the west or outside of the city, their programs are different. So I believe the coffee cup is actually, I believe it's in the green bin in York Region, or the blue bin, I'm not sure, but again, same. Oh, it's in the garbage for us, right? So if a resident lives outside of the City of Toronto, but they come in, and in their homes, they are used to putting the coffee cup in their blue bin. When they come into the City of Toronto, they're actually going to be getting different messaging. So that's one of the challenges, that you have different materials being accepted in different municipal programs, and you also see that confusion when other retailers or restaurants also have signs saying that their coffee cups are recyclable. So it's not a standardized program. It's one of the challenges that we are seeing, and one of the challenges that we are hoping to address through the Provincial Waste Free Ontario Act, to look at more of a standardized list of products to make it easier for residents to know what to put, where to put their items.
Thank you, Charlotte. Please.
I think that anything that's going to happen has to happen at a provincial level, simply because garbage seems to move around, like people who commute into the city with their coffee cup and so on and so forth. I also think that forced innovation seems to be the way to go, and starting with, instead of trying to attack everything at once, starting with one group like the coffee cup, have a 25-cent deposit, same as a beer store, and then you have it paid to the city or the province, whichever the case, and to get it back, you go back to the big coffee shop place. So they got some skin in the game. Right now, they have no skin in the game. So as soon as they have skin in the game, forced innovation will take care of the problem. They'll figure out a way of making it happen.
So I mirror those comments in the sense that extended producer responsibility, right? These are the manufacturers, the producers that bring these materials out, and it's working with them in terms of product design, and also working with them in terms of educating, where the materials should go, right? So again, focusing in from a reduction perspective, but also looking at consumer education and making sure that we work with them to ensure that it goes in like the correct bin or correct waste stream.
But if you have it working on both sides, like if you're paying 25 cents, I mean, anybody would go and get a reusable container. So that way you've got the consumer and the business both having skin in the game and pushing from both sides to make it happen.
Yeah. And again, so that could be through, maybe whether it be a mandatory or a voluntary approach, is imposing that sort of fee on the materials. So that's a feedback, one of the questions that we're asking residents to provide feedback on through this process.
Okay, over to my left.
Oh, sorry, I just want to make one point of clarification. Just to clarify, the coffee cup, I forgot the person that mentioned before. So coffee cup, City of Toronto, goes in the blue bin, goes in the garbage, not in the green bin. Because I think someone mentioned, put up signs to show that goes in the green bin. So point of clarification, coffee cups in the garbage bin in the City of Toronto. Okay.
Hi, so I just wanted to mention a few comments. Very quickly, the one thing is I agree with what was said earlier, that I also believe that we should go with more stringent requirements, especially for businesses. Example is, I cook a lot myself at home, but when I don't want to cook and I call Uber Eats, I always get takeout food in black plastic. I tried it a few times, maybe like 4 or 5 times, thinking, oh, like maybe one day it'll be white plastic or something. But no, it's always always been black plastic. So I no longer order from Uber Eats. But I feel like to stop something like that, to stop large production of plastic, a law needs to be more stringent, or what we're saying needs to be like on the mandatory side of things. So I agree with that. And also a quick note on the Waste Wizard. I love the Waste Wizard as well, but I find it a little bit confusing sometimes, and so I'm always on. I'm on right now, and I also downloaded the app. So my question for you is, when I look at plastic spoons or plastic forks, you had said that it goes in the garbage, but like I see blue bin. So, I even at work, I also work like in the environment field, and sometimes we shouldn't be using cutlery at parties, but sometimes we do use it, and I've checked this before, and it said blue bin, so we placed a bunch of forks and spoons in our blue bin. So, is this wrong?
Yeah, so essentially we're updating our database all the time. I'm looking to Nadine, is it in our blue bin program?
No, it should definitely go in the garbage. And the problem with the plastic cutlery, it's typically made out of polystyrene, which is a very low value plastic. So it's a difficult material to market. So that's why we suggest it goes in the garbage.
Yeah. So I also checked the Toronto Waste app, and it also says blue bin, just in case you want to correct that.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you. We'll correct
feedback
that.
button, so yeah, we can change it.
So that will be addressed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I appreciate
So
this.
as we approach 8 o'clock, I'm going to start to get a little stronger in terms of the facilitation, and let's get through everybody that's on the mic, okay? Please, to my right.
Hi. So thank you so much for this. So I actually work in the Toronto office for the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup. So shorelines for us are anywhere land connects to water. So I just wanted to make that offer that we have statistics behind the volunteer initiatives that I'd be very happy to share. Already, I know there's a few volunteers in here who have contributed. My question, though, is about hosting events, because I go to a lot of eco-type events, but there's a lack of awareness even with the single-use compostable plastics, and I know that's a very complicated issue. That's not what my question's about. The question is, what is the consideration as we think about single-use plastics, about even amongst people who feel they're doing the right thing, if they knew that it was challenging, that it ends up as waste instead of compostable, what are the alternatives there?
Sorry, so the question was around...
How are compostable plastics being factored into the single-use strategy?
Right, so essentially kind of going back to the first R, right? So we want to kind of get away from looking at whether it's a compostable single-use item or if it's a recyclable single-use item. The emphasis here is on reducing the reliance of consuming that single-use product. So what I would say on that piece was to, let's say, maybe use a reusable item rather than a plastic or a cutlery item that goes in the blue bin or or in the green bin program.
Yeah, no, the question was like the awareness that it's not a compostable item.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so helping to build that in so that people know to reduce the use of those items as well.
Right, okay, yeah. So again, raising awareness on the challenges of compostable, or not challenges, but essentially the confusion around compostable items versus like recyclable.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Please.
Hello. Mine is more of a comment. My parents, they're not in Toronto, but it is west from here in Waterloo. They have their own store. So I was thinking, because we always talk about big businesses, but how about the small businesses? There's the first presenter said, question asker said, it's really expensive to get things that are, especially for a small business, it's expensive to actually buy reusable bags. So my dad in particular, he buys plastic because it's just cheaper. And I think we really need to put an emphasis for the small businesses, because that's the lifeblood of Toronto, I think, and Ontario in general. I think that's what we have to focus on. We can't just focus on big businesses. We also have a kitchen too. So we do have those plastic containers. So I just want to see what type of sustainability would actually come out of that.
So, or is it, what kind of support can the city offer for small
Yeah.
businesses in terms of the first R?
Yeah, and that's the That's the conversation we want to have with our business community. So that's going to be part of the stakeholder consultation sessions that will be taking place next week and the week after. And it'll be questions just like that. So it's sort of, what are you currently doing? Maybe they're already doing something in place that reduces single-use items. And what are some of the considerations? So what are some of the challenges, your concerns with any sort of policy or program that's put in place? And that's something where we want to work with them, and whether it be developing exemption or a phased-in approach. So that's, again, that's part of the conversation, is to sort of understand their challenges, how it could or how it may impact them, and take that in developing our recommendations to council.
Okay, over to the right.
Hi. Okay, so I think one of the big problems is that municipalities in Ontario all do things differently. There's mass confusion about what is recyclable and what isn't. And I think really the big message should be that plastics are very difficult and very expensive to recycle, and that very few, like 11% of our plastics are recycled or something. So I think that, I go to the food court every day and I see the vast amount of waste that's created every single day with plastic cutlery and styrofoam containers and stuff. And primarily it's people think that all of that's going to be recycled, so they don't really think about it. So I think really a big message from the city should be that practically none of this is getting recycled. We need to do something to reduce the consumption of this. So I think the push should be more to bring your own cutlery, reuse your cutlery, do not take plastic cutlery, and don't replace it with compostable, because there's a lot of energy required to create that stuff. So really, I think the city should be focusing on educating people about bringing their own containers. That we need to, reduce reduction and reuse is really, I think, where we should be going, not and away from the consumption of plastics.
Yeah, no, great comment. Mirror it as well, because that's something, again, we've always sort of stressed and framed this consultation as it's a reduction strategy first and foremost, and that aligns with the City of Toronto's long-term waste management strategies, prioritizing that first R.
Thank you.
Hi. I failed to kind of really see the opportunity in the presentation. And I think if the city were able to publish kind of the price per kilogram of garbage versus recycling, different types of waste, price per kilogram of litter per marine cleanup, it would really illustrate the opportunities available and really drive innovation in the private sector. So I was wondering if the city has a plan for providing those prices and making those opportunities much more down to the bottom line rather than just an idea.
Right. So when we look at, let's say, developing policies or programs, we look at it from a triple bottom line approach. So there is definitely the cost factor, because obviously the cost of delivering that service is borne by the ratepayers, the residents that pay into the system to receive the services that we offer. But we also look at it from an environmental as well as social as well, so we can't ignore those two other other factors in looking at our development, our policies and programs. So to your question, yes, it's something that we would consider in informing any sort of program we put in place. But again, also balancing that with accessibility, balancing it with even the social component as well as the environmental sustainability of that solution.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, so I'm a software developer, and part of what we do a lot is collect
Sorry,
data.
I didn't catch that first part.
I'm a software developer, and part of what we do is we collect data about people to try and influence consumer behavior. And if there's one thing I've learned time and time again is that people will act selfishly, and they will take the path of least resistance. And I think that's apparent. Keeping that in mind, I think it's apparent that most people in Toronto and Canada want these sort of single-use items, right? We see that in the rise of the coffee shop in Toronto and the relatively few amount of people who are bringing their own cups, right? We see it in the relatively few amount of people who are sitting here today. We see it in the relatively few amount of people who are responding to the survey, right? 6,000 is great, but that's 0.1% of the GTA. So clearly people want these items. So I guess my question is, right, I think it's not really a question of education because we've been receiving education about how to recycle and how to deal with our waste since I was a child, right? Like I've gotten that my whole life. Everyone I know has gotten that their whole life, and that hasn't really influenced their behavior. They still do what they want to do. The people who are recycling, and the people who aren't. So if we're gonna make it like a path of least resistance kind of thing, if we're gonna make it so the best option is not to use these, do we as a city feel like that, like we need to eliminate these sort of businesses that provide these single takeaway items? Because if you tell me that like it's gonna cost me 10 cents more for my coffee cup, I don't care, I will pay that. Until you add enough price that I'm not going to that coffee shop anymore, and then that coffee shop can exist.
Yeah, so that would be, I think, the feedback, you can provide through the survey and comments, right? So if you feel like there needs to be a stronger stance that, maybe through a mandatory approach to kind of drive that desired behavior rather than a voluntary. That's, again, we're looking to the resident stakeholders to tell us what you think is going to be effective in changing the behavior of the general population.
I guess my question is succinctly, do we consider that, like, as a side effect, that these businesses might not be able to exist anymore, and like, are we okay with that moving forward?
Well, I think it's the question to residents, right? Like, it's more so to those that visit these shops and those that, like the stakeholders within the city of Toronto. So again, it's emphasizing that it's really, you're the users of the service, right? You're the ones that go to, all of us do, I guess, but we go to the retailers, to the grocers. And, if it's something like, I, will no longer support, I will no longer go to this location because they don't do X. It's, again, putting the power in sort of the hands of the residents and the program users. So it's a question more so of yourselves, I think, and not like the greater you, rather than the question of the City of Toronto. We're just listening and seeing what you think would be an appropriate, or what would be an effective measure, and should we be doing it from a voluntary perspective? Is that what's going to change
Well, Charlotte,
the
if I could
residents, or if
just
it's gonna
interject,
change-
clearly we're hearing that people, at least tonight, want a stronger stance
Write
and
that in a
of the
survey.
mandatory variety. Let's go over to my left, please.
Thank you for that question.
Hello.
Sorry.
This is in regards to the city's efforts in raising awareness, so your educational campaigns. So basically like the Bad Things Happen campaign, and the other one with the culprits, so that one's really cute. And then I'm wondering if you've ever considered, like I realize that environmentalism and talking about these things, it's all like gloom and doom and stuff, and we don't want the public to like feel that, but there is an impact. So I'm wondering if the educational campaigns are going to have more of like, if you do this, then this is what happens, like really getting people present to what's happening, as opposed to like something more cartoony, because I've been asking
like
people like,
consequences?
yeah, like have you been noticing these ads, like, and it seems like that only adds to the confusion for some people, because it's not actually, like, it's so far removed from what's it's actually talking about. So I'm wondering if something more clear is in the works.
Right. So with consumer awareness and education, we take a multi-pronged approach. It's about getting that message out in different mediums, whether it be through a digital, print, or social media, as well as doing a curbside monitoring of bins as well. So we do have staff that go out and take a look at blue bin recycling bins and seeing if there are items that don't belong in there. So to your point about consumer awareness around education, it's hard to make that direct correlation to say that a campaign has resulted in the desired behavior, because there's so many other different variables and factors that come into play. So the way the city approaches or addresses that issue is, again, multi-pronged, so in person, through meetings such as this, through education campaigns, but also on-site visits to the sites themselves. And if I may, because I probably will forget saying this at the end of the session, so there is, I'll put in a plug-in for a upcoming I would say engagement session that the City of Toronto will be hosting. It's going to be taking place on November 8th and 9th. More details will be on our website. And it's around, on the 9th, it's actually going to be essentially asking the question like through residents, so this is everything that the City of Toronto has been doing to try to reduce and address contamination in the blue bin program. What are we missing? What can we do better? What are your ideas? And it's more of a human-centered design approach to the challenge of contamination. So November 8th and 9th, it'll be on our website for more information, but just want to put in that plug in that we are, again, looking to engage community, and you tell us what you think is missing.
Thank you. So we're at 8:07, so that's just a time check for the room. I'm going to go over here, but then we're going to focus on getting you three's questions answered. So please, and then we're going to finish up over here. One question, please.
You made it hard now. Okay. I'm going to make a comment and a question.
Fair enough.
So the comment is, the European Union has a plastic strategy and research funding to replace the Horizon, which is called Horizon 2020. So I was just wondering if the City of Toronto has a fund for innovation to replace the plastics. In addition to that, I've seen that in Mexico, there was a young engineer, 24-year-old, who invented how to make bricks using plastics and cement, right? So these are things that, you know, we could implement, learn from the South, learn from other countries what they're doing. And is there a fund in Toronto?
So to the question, the first question, is there a direct pot of fund available for that? There is not. We don't have a funding source to, accelerate innovation. But there is work being done through a new unit that was created. It's a circular unit for research innovation in a circular economy. And I'm looking to my colleague, Annette, who's sitting over there on the far right side or to the right of me. And that's the sort of things that they're looking at. They're looking at broad jurisdictions, looking at international sort of technology innovators, looking at are there other best practices that can be learned from other countries in terms of creative or new ways of processing something, new materials, or turning something into something different. So there is research being done and also networking with those international, players, actors within the circular economy to see what we can learn from them and see if there's anything that can be applied at a local scale in the City of Toronto.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Thanks for the presentation. I just want to, actually, that lady who was asking about the funding, there is something that I learned about. It's called the Community Waste Reduction Grant. The city does actually promote, and it's a 3-year pilot. So if there are innovators, I believe they can apply for that, right?
So the Waste Community Grants Program
That's not my question, though.
not a question. Okay.
That was just to correct, because I wanted to...
Thank you.
Yeah. I also wanted to just say that to everyone here, we all know there's a municipal election coming up, and you got to make sure you know your candidate's role, like where they stand on this topic, because you want to make sure that you have allies. We have allies in council who are going to help push this thing through in the next couple of years. So get out and vote and ask questions to them. But my question to you guys is, as a demonstration of commitment and dedication to waste strategy, would you implement something that is kind of as strict as the Dine Safe and have something like the green, like a green score for restaurants and bars and cafes, where you go in and you rate them? Do they offer reusables? Do they have takeout? Like, can I bring my takeout container and they fill it for me? Do they have bulk? Do they have, that kind of incentive for customers to come in? And would you do something like that?
Yeah, so I think that's a great feedback, a good idea, something to put into a survey or comments, and that could be something that the city could look at in terms of developing a program to profile green businesses.
Thanks for that suggestion.
I'd like to ask a question about the coffee cup. The city's obviously spent quite a bit of money on TTC buses, in the media, about the coffee cup that can't be recycled. And I'm just wondering how much money was spent on that? And the second part to that, how effective is the message?
Yeah, so in terms of our ad campaigns, it's a multi-prong. We do ad campaigns, I believe. We did a considerable buy for it, so I would say in the hundreds of thousands. But that's also trying to offset a cost that's costing the city of Toronto millions of dollars annually in increasing contaminations. And I think someone asked a question about the effectiveness of the campaign on whether it's resulted in the desired reduction. It's hard to make that correlation because we are doing other activities simultaneously, such as going onto property building, going to apartment buildings, condominiums, looking in their bins, also going to single-family homes and looking in their bins for contamination. So it's not an isolated action that we're doing that we can directly correlate and say that, yes, this campaign has resulted in X reduction.
Okay. So the second part to this is, I want to say that I appreciate the City of Toronto for putting it out there that the coffee cup can't be recycled, because I have a company that does recycle coffee cups. And so what's good about the city saying you can't recycle it is it gets people into a conversation about exactly that. So thanks to the city for doing that, and it helps me recycle coffee cups.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have our last question, please.
Hi. Within the scope of incentivizing the small businesses to reduce or provide like customers more opportunity to reduce or I'm not good at public speaking, I apologize. What are some
You're actually doing
specific-
great, so
Yeah.
we're listening.
What are some specific examples of how the City of Toronto can incentivize small businesses to approach reduction and recycling and reuse? Are there any specific examples that you could provide, like to me and to us tonight, on what that would look like?
Good question.
So sorry, the question was around how the City of Toronto could incentivize
Yeah,
businesses
so like
to
what
implement.
incentives would you provide to small businesses to large businesses?
Or some examples.
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
that
some examples.
currently exist.
So some examples I think we can look at would be I think it's is like essentially like waiving, like it's like, or maybe like taking off a certain discount off like their permits, for example, licenses that they have to apply to the City of Toronto to get to in order to operate their business in here. So that could be one example, like a financial incentive for a commercial establishment to implement a reduction program.
It's 8:14. I said last question over here, but you are going to make it.
Taking in a lot of pressure. Last question.
You made it.
I know the federal government has implemented a reduction strategy for paper or plastic, I believe. Does the city have some sort of institutional-wide policy, or are they talking about it?
Sorry, so if the City of Toronto is talking about the federal strategy?
No, I mean in terms of the city's own operations internally.
Right. So we were also looked at, we were also directed by council to look at ourselves internally in terms of like our own buildings, our own policies, working with even, let's say, cafes, for example, within our facilities as well. So yes, we will be looking at our own in-house as well.
Okay, on that note, I want to thank everybody again for coming out. We still are here till 8:30. There's lots of staff to answer questions or share more comments if you didn't provide them already at the mic. Encourage you, if you haven't already, to fill out the online survey. Share it with family and friends too, because we've got 6,000, but as I heard, we can increase that number. And if you so feel inclined, there's also a comment wall that I really forgot to plug earlier, which lends itself to quick comments or posted notes. So if you want to do that, we encourage you as well. Thank you again.